Right, today I'm in London with legendary dog bookmaker Tom Power. Thanks very much for agreeing to talk to us today, Tom.
Greyhound bookmaker.
Right, we'll go straight into it. The height of your career, you and your brother were the biggest names in Greyhound bookmaking. So tell us a bit about where you used to bet.
Well, my twin brother, John, is my twin. And my father was a Greyhound bookmaker, and he had pitches at Walthamstow and Hackney. And in them days, it wasn't that difficult to get pitches. It became impossible. You had to pay a lot of money. But in those early days, when I was like a young teenager, I used to go and help him sometimes, and I had time off. The only way I could get hold of a little bit of money, I used to get 12 and sixpence, which is 62p in modern money, for a night's work. But that was, it went quite a long way then. Now it don't even buy a Mars bar. My dad would take me, and I'd earn a bit of money, and you learn the game like that. My dad never taught me anything. You just have to pick it up as you go. You know, it's a bit of suck it and see job. But we used to go regularly, and then I started working regularly at Walthamstow when I was 16, 17. And my brother as well, but not together. We alternated on the nights. We weren't that important as staff. And then when we got a couple of years older, and me and my brother John, we took over my dad's pitch. He was getting a bit sour of the game. It was changing, and he was getting old, and we put him on wages and took over his pitch. He was fortunate, or rather we were fortunate, in that he was there was only two bookies who were there in the original opening night in 1933 or wherever it was, and my dad was one of them. And so in those days, seniority counted for quite a bit in the racing world, you know. And so if a pitch became vacant, it was always offered to the most senior bookmaker in that bay of pitches. So you'd move up into that pitch. So we were the most senior bookmaker at Walthamstow in the silver ring. But there were a couple of vacant pitches in the main ring, what we used to call the big ring, and John and I tried to get one of them. There were two vacant pitches, and we did it through the Bookmakers Committee, which is 3 or 4, 5 or 6 bookmakers, and they all meet every week and talk about, I don't know what they talk about, cups of tea I think. And they were going to do it for us, and it went on and on and on. Cut a long story short, they had filed the application in the drawer and forgotten all about it. John and I were quite successful in the silver ring. We became the biggest layers, laying fairly big bets as was then. 20 quid bet was a big bet then. And John, my brother, give him his due. I never compliment him, but I will do on this occasion. Another vacant pitch became available in the main ring, but that was handed over to the Bookmakers Committee to allocate, and they hadn't allocated the one before, and they weren't going to allocate this one. And so John went over the head of the Bookmakers Committee and went to see the governor of the track. That was Charles Chandler in those days, Mr. Charles Chandler. He was one of the sons of Bill Chandler, the founder of the track. And he said to Charles Chandler that, you know, we've been waiting 3 years now for our original application to be dealt with. We are the senior bookmaker, because although it wasn't my dad betting on the pitch, it was still his pitch, and it still carried the seniority. And Charles said, I wasn't in that meeting, John was there, and Charles Chandler said, is that right? We've got 2 vacant pitches. He didn't even know they had 2 vacant pitches, because he'd left it all up to the Bookmakers Committee. The following meeting, we've gone to Walthamstow to work, and the chairman of the committee, I won't mention his name, because it's not a nice thing what he did, and he's dead now. But he came over to us and said, oh, he's got good news, he said. I've spoken to Charles Chandler and you're definitely coming into the main ring next week. Oh, well done, we said, well done. Glad to hear that. And we did. The following week we were in the main ring, which was, there hadn't been a new bookmaker in that main ring. I don't know when, I can't remember who was the one before that. And we went from there. Obviously there's a lot more money in the main ring. We was quite big in the silver ring because it was a good track, Walthamstow. A lot of people in both sides. But the money's different class in the main ring, different class.
So was there any animosity from the bookies after you got in by sort of forcing your way in there?
Of course there was.
They
thought that the Bookmakers Committee, chaired by one man really, they thought that they'd snookered us and that we would always accept their decisions as all the bookies had always done that. Doing it through that committee system's great, except it's a brick wall. John went to see Charles Chandler, which I never had the guts to do, and he said, I didn't know there was 2 vacancies in the ring. We'll see about that. And we were in within a week.
So you must have been the small fish in the big pond from being the big fish in the small pond.
Well, we created quite a stir in the silver ring.
Yeah.
Because bookies were pretty much the same age, my dad's age, 60, and they all sort of, after the war bookies, they all became bookies, and it's a good living. You know, you're not a multi-millionaire, but it's better than working in the mines. And the bookies all worked together, and mostly semi-skilled workmen. They knew how to do it. They knew how to be bookies, a lot of them, which I don't think they do now, but they did then. And it's 3 nights a week, and you can get a living out of it. Well, you tell me it's better than being a black cab driver. You know, that's what it was. We started in the silver ring as a second generation, and really, my brother John used to bet, not me. I never bet once in that silver ring, but John used to bet, and we set the ring alight a little bit. We were much more aggressive than and if it was 6 to 4 over, with a couple of the other bookies, everyone would take it off. We'd leave it up. We'd leave up the 11 to 8, see how much we could take out of it. And because we had a tic-tac across the track in the main ring, and we could always hedge. Didn't do a lot of hedging though, in fairness. Tends to be a bit of a panic, 6 to 4 over, everyone rubs it off. We used to leave it up, and of course, so you end up getting all the punters in front of you if you don't take the prices off. And we did that, and we were quite successful in that silver ring. But as a limit, you know, when we went in the main ring, after a little conflab with Charlie Chandler, well, we used to take more money on one race in the main ring than we take all night long in the silver ring.
So what were the figures, and what was the sort of money you were taking in the silver ring compared to what you took?
I can remember the first time we took £1,000 on a race in the main ring. We took £1,000 on the race. I can remember that, and I can also remember the first time we won £1,000 on a race. That was also in the main ring, as our business flourished. Walthamstow also was, not because of us, but Walthamstow was also doing really well. It was that time, it was the late 60s, yeah, and it might have even been the early 70s, and Walthamstow was flourishing, doing well, getting big crowds. There was plenty of money around.
So how many of those big crowds would have professional punters in them? How many people were making a living betting in those rings?
Well, you say that, and it's a phrase that I personally am not a punter. My dad wasn't a punter, and he always said to me, Tom, he said, they don't win, be on the other side, you know, be on the side that wins. And it ain't the punters, it's the bookies. But professional punters, there was a few punters there who were respected. And there were a few punters there who actually went to the trials, and it was a lot less, it wasn't higher tech in the then days. They used to go to the trials, they used to time the dogs themselves. They didn't accept the times that the track gave out for the trials, and they would do they'd get the runners for the following meeting, and they'd do what you call a tissue. A tissue is all the races, and they'd work out how they think we should bet on it. Of course, that's very valuable information from them. They didn't give it away. Some of them used to sell it. They used to sell the tissue, and they might sell 20, 30 tissues before the meeting, and that's his opinion of the betting on each particular race. And some of those guys were really good judges. Bearing in mind, all they had was a stopwatch, and there might be two of them working together. So one's got a stopwatch to the first bend, and the other one's got to the track. And there was some famous one at Walthamstow named Vic Armand. Vic Armand was a very good judge, and that's all he was, a good judge. But you'd love to find out what he thought of a race if he went into it. We used to price up. The silver ring would price up first, and then our tic-tacs would send over. Not all the bookies had tic-tacs, only us. They'd price up 6 to 4, something, and then it'd be taken, it'd be 5 to 4. So we'd know that, so we wouldn't price up 5 to 4. We'd price up evens, thinking, well, if there's a lot of money for this, it's going to be evens. And stuff, you learn, it's like fighting someone. If you've got a good left hook, you keep your right up, you don't lead with your chin. Yeah.
So were there any punters there that you would sort of say, "I'll leave me out" if they come up for a bet?
Well, Vic Armand was one of them. If he wanted to be on, you'd be very respectful of his money. But he wasn't that big a punter. But he had following. That's the problem, of course. He might want his 30 quid on or something, 30 quid at 4 to 1. But there'd be 10 people behind him waiting to see what he backs, and then they will dive in to back it. So you have to be wary of that. But I have to be honest. I don't know anyone who made it pay punting. At the finish, there was a couple when it was all tailing off and getting funny. But I did. Open racing was different, but graded racing difficult.
Okay.
Of course, the track doesn't want it easy. They want it difficult. They want all the. I mean, when I bet Haringey, I knew the management at Haringey very well, Ernie Farron, and he told me that he'd had instructions from that was a GRA track. Walthamstow wasn't, but it was a GRA track, and he'd had instructions from head office that they want a short price favourite in the last race every night. So so the last race would be a 6 to 4 favourite, but was probably short enough to be evens. And why did they want that? He said, and I took to Ernie very, very openly. He was a nice fella, and he also had a bottle of whiskey in his desk under the counter. He said the management, in their wisdom, figured out that punters mostly back losers. He said, but if the last favourite wins, it's going to be a lot of them on it. They're get out bet, they're doing 12 quid, so they back it to win 15 quid. And so they wanted the last favourite to win. It wasn't crooked racing by any means, but they liked the last favourite to win. And then they'd go home. They may have just lost, they may have just won, but at least they go home remembering one victory. It's like getting a penalty when you're 4-0 down. At least you could get one back. Yeah. Yeah, so I remember that. That's what he told me. That the grading was the racing was straight as they could do it, but they wanted the last favourite to win, so they had to put a favourite in. It was all price.